When it comes to beating the best of the West, the Sacramento Kings know how to get the job done. De'Aaron Fox collects a career-high 16 assists, and he and his Kentucky brother Malik Monk both finished with 26 points as the Sacramento Kings knock off the defending champion Denver Nuggets 123-117. The beam is lit, and we're breaking it all down right here on Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time. Time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News. And after the Kings had a tough night energy-wise and tough night overall, the last time we saw them play in this building, the second night of a back-to-back against the Los Angeles Clippers, the energy is much better. Keegan Murray makes his return and is right back into the starting lineup. We'll talk about the game that he had later on in the podcast. The Kings welcome in the Denver Nuggets, of course, defending champions, on their second night of a back-to-back, and we got an entertaining battle where, for the most part, the Sacramento Kings dominated this game despite the fact that they only won by 6 points. There's no other way we are starting this podcast other than talking about De'Aaron Fox. And I've said that before this season, right? I've started many podcasts already this year talking about De'Aaron Fox and the scoring that he's done, multiple 30-point performances. He's coming off of a 40-point game against the Los Angeles Clippers the other night. But I would put this game amongst the top of the games that De'Aaron has had so far this season. De'Aaron didn't have to do all the scoring. Oh no, his teammates helped him out, and De'Aaron was facilitating everything. Like I mentioned in the intro, a career-high 16 assists for Fox, and one of the best parts of his stat line, only one turnover to go along with those 16 assists. He finished with 26 points, 10 of 22 from the field, 3 of 6 from three-point range, and also added 3 steals on top of that to boot. Now, I'm not trying to start any you-know-what here. I just am saying what I think needs to be said. When a certain guy in Indiana is putting 16 assists on the board, everybody is talking about it and writing about it and giving it all the praise that it deserves, and rightfully so. I'm not taking anything away from Mr. Tyrese Halliburton. There's no shade thrown at him. Everybody knows how much Sacramento loves and appreciates Tyrese Halliburton. It's not about that. It's about De'Aaron Fox also getting the love and the attention and the praise that's deserved, because even if the narrative is the Kings traded the wrong guard or the Kings were fools to give up Tyrese Halliburton, meanwhile, they have a guard here that's up towards the top in terms of scoring in the league, is certainly in the conversation for an MVP, and now is showing you that, oh yeah, he can get the job done also as a facilitator, a distributor, still provided that excellent defense that he's been known for and Mike Brown has been raving about so far this season. And of course, it's not like he only had 15, 16 points. He still dropped 26 points to tie with Malik Monk to lead the Sacramento Kings in scoring. What can't this man do? De'Aaron Fox was amazing tonight. And to me, this performance is just as important, maybe even more important, certainly because it came in a win, but just as important, just as impressive as the 40 points that he put up the other night against the Los Angeles Clippers. Look, we know that Fox can score. There's nobody that can stop De'Aaron Fox when he wants to get downhill. But it's how De'Aaron Fox has evolved, not just as a scorer, not just as a 3-level scorer. We know how much better his three-point shot has gotten. He's actually gotten away a little bit from the mid-range jumper that was his moneymaker last season, winning the Clutch Player of the Year. He went to that a couple times tonight, but isn't relying on that nearly as much as he has in the past. Of course, we know how lethal he is as a finisher around the rim. You add all that up, defenses are paying so much attention attention to him. De'Aaron, after the game, said every time he gets 2 feet in the paint, there are 6 to 8 eyes on him at all times. Tonight, he takes full advantage of that, reading the defense, finding the open man, and then, of course, De'Aaron's shooters tonight. De'Aaron's teammates, period, were knocking down their shots. It was a great offensive rhythm for the Kings all night long. They took what the defense gave them, and De'Aaron honestly should have more 13, 14 assist games had the Kings been knocking down the shots that Fox is getting for them. It's nice for him to finally get that recognition and for a game like this to show up in the box score because he is just as dynamic of a passer as he can be a scorer at times. And it was great to see with him. Of course, in the fourth quarter too, De'Aaron Fox did his thing, had 10 points in that fourth quarter. 5 of his 16 assists came in the fourth quarter. He assisted both of the dagger threes at the end of the game. One was from Malik Monk to put the Kings up by either 7 or 8 towards the end when the Nuggets were trying to make a little bit of a push. And then the turn out the lights moment, De'Aaron Fox assists Kevin Huerter for a wing 3. And I'm actually not going to talk too much about Kevin Huerter tonight. He finished with 16 points. He got the Kings offense going, shooting the basketball in the first half. Defensively was another solid night for Kevin Huerter, so I'm not forgetting about him. I'm just not talking about him very much because I have to talk about, in addition to De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk. Right, the Kentucky backcourt, these two best friends, I mean, they are just getting better and better playing together. And I mean, De'Aaron is such a good friend to Malik Monk that he's even starting to share his stage in the fourth quarter. Last year, fourth quarter Fox, he was the best fourth quarter player in the league, clutch player of the year, deserved all that recognition. This year, he's still a damn good fourth quarter player and a threat at all times that defenses have to pay attention to. But Malik Monk has been fantastic in the fourth quarter for the Sacramento Kings this year. He has been amazing. And tonight, he had 26 points, went 9 of 14 from the field, 4 of 7 from three-point range, 4 assists, 2 steals. Malik filling up the stat line. And in the fourth quarter alone, 11 points, 4 of 5 from the field, and that big three-pointer, like I mentioned, to help the Kings turn out the lights and secure this win. Malik has been just as reliable of a fourth quarter option for Sacramento on offense as De'Aaron Fox has been. And I mean, how great is that for Mike Brown? How great is that for the Sacramento Kings? Hell, how great is that for De'Aaron Fox? When you're drawing so much attention, when defenses have to pay attention to what number 5 is doing at all times during the fourth quarter because he has shown he can single-handedly lead the Kings to a win or by himself shut the door on any kind of opposing team's comeback. De'Aaron has proven that. To have a fellow two-guard in Malik Monk who's out there over Kevin Huerter despite the fact that Kevin is playing as well as he has been playing this season. To have Malik Monk out there who's just as dynamic as a scorer, just as dynamic of a playmaker, can attack the basket. Maybe he's not as skilled, of course, as De'Aaron Fox is, and he's not the superstar that De'Aaron Fox is, but he is a threat that defenses have to be worried about at all times, and that threat is exemplified, magnified tenfold because Malik is out there with De'Aaron. I asked Malik about this. I asked him, like, look, you're stepping up just as much of a fourth quarter scorer as De'Aaron Fox is. You're going to love what Malik had to say about that. And then after that, I asked De'Aaron Fox about Malik's role coming off of the bench and how he's embraced that role and how he could start on pretty much any team in the league with the way he's playing right now. But him coming off the bench just seems like a perfect fit for this Kings team. Take a listen.
Malik, there was a lot made last season, even this season, about De'Aaron Fox and his fourth quarter impact, but it seems like you are really comfortable taking those big shots and stepping up in those big moments too in the fourth quarter. Can you talk about the dynamic of the two of you and how you can step up with the game on the line?
Yeah, for sure, man. They can't stop both of us. They got that's all it is, man. They can't stop both of us when we out there. So it's just pick your poison. Sometimes I'm on, sometimes he on. Well, most of the times he on. But yeah. For sure.
Fox, going back to Malik, he seems pretty capable of being able to start anywhere, but Mike seems fairly content with him coming off the bench. I know you're not the coach, but what do you see the impact that he has with that second unit, and how perfect do you think is that fit for him?
I mean, whenever you have a guy who's as talented as that and who can start for other teams and they accept their role to come off the bench, it makes you that much better as a team. He comes in, he provides a spark for us, whether if it's putting the ball in the basket or playmaking. Like he provides that spark. He might have a big dunk. There are a lot of things that he does on the court for us that are positives. And since he's accepted that role, and I feel like he's flourishing. I mean, he was one of the six man of the year candidates last year. I think he should be up there again this year. And like I said, he's like that sixth starter. And when he's having a good game for us, that just adds to the dynamic of our offense.
I don't know if De'Aaron Fox is putting together a pitch, planning on giving Malik Monk some of his max contract. I have no idea. The Kings need to pay Malik Monk this offseason. It is abundantly clear how essential Monk is to the success of the Kings. I don't believe, as of now, there's still a lot of season left, but I don't think the context is going to change. As of now, I believe that the Kings cannot afford to let Malik Monk go. Certainly not more than they can't afford to pay him. Or should I say, certainly more than they can't afford to pay him. There's a lesson to be learned tonight for the Sacramento Kings from the Denver Nuggets. An important lesson, I think. Here's a Nuggets squad that they're playing on the second night of a back-to-back, and there's probably some Denver Nuggets fans that are listening to this podcast or watching this podcast right now who are already getting loose in the comment section going, the only reason the Kings won is because the Nuggets are playing on the second night of a back-to-back, or the Jamal Murray excuse, or whatever. And that's fine. You probably have a good point. Certainly, I've seen how bad the Sacramento Kings have been on the 2 second night of back-to-backs that they've played so far this season. The Kings just got their ass kicked by the Los Angeles Clippers the last game, which was a second night of a back-to-back. So I know the impact that has, and the Kings caught the Denver Nuggets at the right time. Look, everybody plays second nights of a back-to-back. It all happens, and sometimes you're at a disadvantage there naturally. But what is the lesson that the Kings can learn from the Nuggets here? It seemed like the Nuggets had run out of gas in that second quarter, right? Nikola Jokic came out of the game, and the Kings went on a 17-4 run to kind of end the first quarter and really start that second quarter. They exploded in the second quarter to build up to a 17-point lead over Denver. Now, the Nuggets could have folded right there. And we've seen the Kings in the 2 back-to-backs that they've played kind of run out of gas, and teams do the exact same thing to them, going on big quarters, big runs, and suddenly they're in a 15, 17, 20-point hole. But the Denver Nuggets, what did they do? Defending champion Denver Nuggets without Jamal Murray, they still made this a game. They kept fighting. They won the second half by a pretty significant margin. They scored, I think, 39 points in the fourth quarter. Got this game from 17 down to just 2 down with a chance to win in the fourth. Now, the Kings did a good job of answering that run. They shut the door. They managed to win this game and do so emphatically on their home floor. So, and truth be told, as much as the Denver Nuggets were making that push, I really wasn't too nervous that the Kings weren't going to be able to close this out. It just seemed like it was their night. Of course, Nikola Jokic was his historic self. I mean, he's been incredible. He finished with his 8th triple-double on the season. And for context, there have been 18 total triple-doubles so far this year. Domantas Sabonis has 1 of them. Jokic has 8 of them. Like, that's how good this man is. We know this. He probably should have been a 3-time MVP. No disrespect to Joel Embiid, but it is what it is. Like, Jokic is just that damn good, and he showed it again tonight. But the Denver Nuggets, as a team, they know, in addition to having an MVP and a superstar like that, they know that they can work their way back into any game no matter how shorthanded they are or how tired they are the second night of a back-to-back or where they're playing, if they're at home or on the road, if they're playing a Western Conference playoff team like the Kings or the worst team in the East. It does not matter. The Nuggets know that there are 48 minutes to every game. And this is where the Nuggets have reached that great status, right? The Nuggets are a great team, defending champions. The Kings are trying to get there as a good team. There is a major lesson that the Kings can learn from the Denver Nuggets tonight. I can't break it down specifically. I tried to ask Mike Brown about it after the game, and Mike kind of focused on Nikola Jokic, and maybe that's the answer. Having an MVP-type player to carry you through second night of a back-to-back when you're not shooting the ball well and you're not playing well. Maybe it is simply Nikola Jokic. But all I'm saying is that if the Kings can learn how to do this in the second night of a back-to-back, amongst many things that they can learn from the Nuggets, but if they can learn how to still be competitive, if they fall into an early hole, they can still battle back. They can rally like the Nuggets did. That is a trait of a great team that so far this season, in the 2 second night of a back-to-back games that the Kings have played, we have not seen yet. I think there's a lesson to be learned from that. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by Gametime. If you went to the Kings game tonight, I hope you bought your tickets on Gametime. If you didn't, you probably paid a little bit more than you had to. Gametime is the amazing ticket app that has all your Kings tickets, your sporting event tickets, tickets to comedy shows, tickets to concerts, theatrical shows, does not matter. You can find it on Gametime. And one of the coolest aspects about Gametime, they make buying tickets stress-free and easy, because if you have to wait till the last minute, that's when you can get some of the best deals. They have flash deals and last-minute savings deals on Gametime that you will just not find anywhere else. Plus, they have an incredible feature. Like pretty much every ticket marketplace, you can kind of get a picture or an idea, right, of what your view is going to be like from your seat. It's especially helpful in major sporting events like football games in massive stadiums, or even concerts in massive stadiums. If you're going to see Taylor Swift or some big concert at Levi Stadium, right, you want to know what your view is going to look like from your section. Well, most of them give you kind of a general ballpark idea. Gametime gives you a picture and a view directly from your row. It's as accurate as I have ever seen on these apps. Gametime is the number one place for you to go and buy your tickets. So download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off of your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. So let's run through some of the winning numbers for the Sacramento Kings tonight in their victory over the defending champions. Like I mentioned earlier, the Kings made their big run with Nikola Jokic on the bench. And this has been something that this Kings team has not done as well as they probably should this season, right? Playing the Golden State Warriors, when Steph Curry came out of the game, the Kings not only have failed at times to take advantage of that, at times they would fall into an even deeper hole with how the Warriors bench was playing that night. The Kings, when Nikola Jokic exited the game, Jokic had 16 points in the first quarter. He was excellent to start this game. When Jokic subbed out, the Kings went on that 17-4 run to create the separation and take full control of this game. You have to pounce against teams when they have elite players. And look, every single team has talent in the league. There are bad teams certainly this season, but whether you're looking at like the San Antonio Spurs, who have a Victor Wembanyama, even the Portland Trailblazers to some extent, they have Scoot and they have Shaedon Sharpe. Like, there are so many teams in the league that maybe are certainly not on the level that the Kings are at, and maybe don't have too much hope for the playoffs, but they have a player or two that can beat you. And when those players are out of the game, that is when you really have to strike, whether it's coming back from an early hole, extending a lead. That's why the Kings bench, we focus so much on the Kings bench and their second unit and the scoring punch that they provide. It was great to see that the Kings took full control of this game when Nikola Jokic was not playing. The Denver Nuggets, now this probably has more to do with the second night of a back-to-back than it does the Kings defense, but the Nuggets were atrocious shooting the basketball tonight. They finished with 6 3-pointers. They made their first three-pointer with like 2.5 minutes to go in the third quarter. They could not hit a shot from deep. Again, credit to them. They were able to keep the game close despite that. Now, they did fall into a 17-point hole because they couldn't hit shots, and they like I mentioned, hit all 6 of their threes in the second half, and the majority of them came in the fourth quarter. But anytime you can get any team in the league to struggle that mightily from the perimeter, you give yourself a great chance to win. The Kings were technically outscored in the paint, but it was like 62-60. The Kings finished with 60 points in the paint. When the Kings are touching the paint and getting to the rim, good things happen, and that directly correlates to three-point shooting. Check it out. Once again, the Kings had one of their best three-point shooting nights of the season, and they did it only shooting 34 three-pointers. They shot 16 of 34, 47%. This Kings team does not need to chuck up 45 threes a night to win. Now, they're capable of doing so, but most of the time, if you run through the Kings box scores, if you see Sacramento taking 42, 43, 44, 45 threes, typically they're not doing as good as games like tonight. When the Kings are getting to the rim, establishing themselves in the paint, getting those paint touches, which is a pillar of Mike Brown's offense, getting those spray threes and kicking out to the perimeter and moving the ball around, that is when this team is at their best. And, of course, Sabonis was doing well scoring in the paint. De'Aaron Fox, we know how lethal he is in the paint. The Kings, even though they lost the points in the paint battle, they still finished with 60 points in the paint, which was one of the reasons why their three-point shooting was so successful. And then the Kings, we know how good they are in transition. When they get out and play with pace, they had 19 fast break points tonight. That was the energy that we needed to see from this group, especially after how they played in their most recent game against the Los Angeles Clippers. Finally, both teams finished with 11 turnovers. So completely even on the turnover ratio, right? And I think actually, to the Denver Nuggets' credit, they finished with more assists than the Sacramento Kings did in this game, only by a slight margin, but still. But with both teams turning the ball over 11 times, the Kings outscored the Nuggets 20-11 on those points off turnovers. A 9-point difference there. That's a major difference in this 6-point win for Sacramento tonight. All right, let's talk about two Kings centers. And I'm not going to start with Domantas Sabonis, even though he had a good game. I'll get to him in a second. How about the first half that JaVale McGee had, huh? The impact that JaVale McGee made coming into this game. Now, a lot of his minutes were when Nikola Jokic was resting, but also had some decent minutes against Jokic, did his job. But I love the spark that JaVale McGee provided. 8 points, a perfect 4 of 4 shooting from the field, 4 rebounds, 3 blocks. All of this was pretty much in the first half. He had really one really solid stint. He gave the Kings a boost off that bench. JaVale's not going to give this to you every night. JaVale might only give this to you once, twice, 3 times a season. But you best be taking advantage of it when he provides it for you. And it was great to see the Kings get that kind of impact from JaVale McGee on a night where they're kind of forced to play big because the Nuggets have not just Nikola Jokic, but backing him up coming off the bench, another long, athletic center in DeAndre Jordan. Even though Jordan's getting up there in years, he's still a long, athletic center. This was not the kind of night where the Kings really could get away with playing Trey Lyles at the 5. Before the game started, I actually asked Mike Brown about that. I asked what goes into that decision. He said a couple interesting things I'll paraphrase really quick. One of the things he said was he thought it's too early in the season, especially with Trae Young missing the first chunk of the year with his calf injury. I said Trae Young, I meant Trey Lyles. It was too early in the season for him to commit to Lyles or to a small ball 5. And when he looks to go to Trae at the 5 and go small is when he feels that the Kings are out of a rhythm a little bit, especially an offensive rhythm, and he uses that to get the Kings shooting going, get their floor spacing going, and also to help kind of drag the opposing team's center out of the paint a little bit and make them a little bit uncomfortable. So that's Mike Brown's thought process for when to play Trey Lyles at the 5. Of course, I would like to see Trae play more at the 5 when the matchup makes sense for it, but tonight I don't really think the matchup called for it, and JaVale McGee got that opportunity, and he provided big minutes. Then there's Domantas Sabonis, who, of course, has the main challenge of dealing with Nikola Jokic. And even on top of that, Sabonis is coming off of 2 straight games where he did not play very well. He played fine at best against the Golden State Warriors, played pretty bad in the loss to the Clippers where he was completely outplayed by Zubats. Right? So to see him come back, he didn't outplay Nikola Jokic. He didn't win that matchup by any means, but he still was really solid. 17 points, 7 of 18 from the field, 15 rebounds, 7 assists. He made a winning impact on this game while dealing with going at and guarding a league MVP. So it's hard to ask for too much more from Sabonis than what we saw in this game tonight. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by FanDuel. As the weather gets colder, the NFL offers get hotter on FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 moneyline bet. That's right. It's $150 in bonus bets that you get if your team wins. No questions asked. Pick your team that's a heavy favorite or pick any team that's a heavy favorite. All you have to do is risk $5. You win. Not only are you getting the money that you win on that bet, which probably isn't too much, and that's fine because you get $150 in bonus bets where you can do the real playing and have the real fun on FanDuel. Use that $150 as a free investment to turn into real cash that you can put in your pocket on FanDuel by betting on things like point totals, spreads, player props, over-unders, and so much more on FanDuel, especially with Kings action, NBA action. You can pick on individual performances. You can pick on like future awards if you want to bet on De'Aaron Fox or even Malik Monk winning the Sixth Man of the Year award or winning the Clutch Player of the Year award. If you want to bet on the Sacramento Kings making a deep playoff run, winning the in-season tournament, you can do all of that on FanDuel. If you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time than right now. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Kick off the NFL season with FanDuel, official partner of the NFL. It was great to see Keegan Murray, number 13, back for the Sacramento Kings, and it wasn't the best of performances for Keegan. He continues to work his way through a shooting slump. Now, of course, he's battling back from a lower back injury, which I certainly haven't dealt with back problems to the level of what maybe some of you have dealt with and what professional athletes deal with, and maybe even Keegan Murray is dealing with, but everyone knows that when you get that little stitch in your back or tweak your back or mess up your back a little bit, it can have lingering effects for a while. So the Kings took their time bringing Keegan back. He missed 4 games, technically 4.5, as he didn't appear in the second half of the first loss to the New Orleans Pelicans, if you remember. So it was great to see Keegan back. He's working his way certainly back, and he had one really, really good stretch. He scored all 8 of his points in the third quarter, and he did it almost like back-to-back-to-back. He hit back-to-back threes, and then a couple plays later hit a 2-pointer. One of his threes was a nasty step back in transition to lose his defender, and then he pulled up silky smooth. Like, that's the Keegan Murray that we know he's capable of being, and that's the Keegan Murray that he will get back to that at some point this season. And with how good the Kings are playing right now, with how great De'Aaron Fox and Malik Monk are playing, even Kevin Huerter has finally worked his way into a rhythm. The Kings still are not at their best self. Why? Because they are missing that Keegan Murray impact. Plus, Domantas Sabonis can still play better as well, despite the fact that his scoring numbers so far this season are actually up. So really cool to see Keegan back. And, of course, he's going to work his way into even more game shape. We'd like to see him, once he gets more healthy, work his way out of that three-point shooting slump that he's been dealing with for most of this season. But seeing 13 out there for the Kings, all is right in the world when Keegan is playing. And I will give him credit because on the defensive end of the floor, Keegan did a good job. He was guarding Michael Porter Jr., who had a pretty below-average night. Now, again, second night of a back-to-back. Maybe that had some kind of impact on everything. But Michael Porter Jr., 13 points, 5 of 12 shooting from the field, but a woeful 1 of 5 from three-point range. Keegan Murray had that assignment. One of the big reasons the Kings were successful in this game is, sure, Nikola Jokic got his, but they didn't allow the Michael Porter Jr.'s, the Aaron Gordons, the Reggie Jacksons, and everybody else to beat them. So great job with Keegan Murray getting involved in the defensive game again. Also finished with 5 rebounds, which is a good stat for him. So what's next for the Kings? Well, in this building, Monday, high-stakes basketball. Not only do the Kings get their revenge, or their chance at revenge, against the New Orleans Pelicans, who beat them twice in a row during this road trip they just returned from. If they win, they go to Vegas. Yeah, it's the NBA in-season tournament quarterfinals. Kings with home court advantage taking on a Pelicans team that is a tough matchup for Sacramento. They are. The Kings struggle with length, and they struggle with physicality. Well, they have a man named Zion Williamson that the Kings had absolutely zero answer for. He was bullying everybody in the paint. I don't know what the Kings are going to do against him, who they're going to throw at him, not to mention, of course, a piece like Brandon Ingram, who can go off, and he had one of his best games of the season against Sacramento when they played in New Orleans a couple of weeks ago. And then, CJ McCollum is back for the New Orleans Pelicans, too. I'm planning on recording a full preview with Locked On Pelicans coming up tomorrow on the Locked On Kings podcast. So keep an eye out for that, getting you ready for this massive game between these two teams. And it dawned on me the other day, like, it's like I don't want to jinx anything, right? But if you remember when COVID-19 happened, right? The shutdown night. The Kings and Pelicans were set to play here in Sacramento. Both of those teams were battling for a playoff position, and many believe that the winner of that game was going to end up being the one to kind of secure an 8th or 7th seed to work themselves into the playoffs. This was before the play-in tournament existed. So, is this finally the NBA universe's make-up game for that game that was stolen from us? Because I was really excited to watch that game. There were a lot of people piling into the Golden One Center that night who were really, really anxious about one of the most important Kings games in quite a long time. Well, now we have, in the inaugural season of the NBA in-season tournament, you have the Sacramento Kings, one of the few teams remaining, playing for a chance to go to Vegas and compete in the semifinals. Very exciting. Can't wait for Kings and Pelicans on Monday night. If you're coming to that game, let me know. You can hit me up on Twitter at Matt George Sack. You can email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Also, let me know in the YouTube comment section down below, too. Get in touch with me. I'm always or usually at the top of section 105. That's where the media seating is. But if I'm not up there, I'm walking around or I'm downstairs or something. But you can get in touch with me. Let's set up a place to meet and chat. If you run into me at the game, always say hi. I always try and say hi back if I have the time to do so. I hope I've never ignored anyone. Sometimes the hearing is a little rough in the arena and stuff like that. So if you ever call my name and I don't listen to you or I don't hear you, I promise you I'm not trying to ignore you. I love the opportunity to say hi and thank you in person for listening to this podcast. I really appreciate all your support. It's great to talk about a Kings win over the defending champions. They got their vibe back a little bit, and hopefully those good vibes can carry into Monday's major game. Can't wait for that again. A Locked On Kings and Locked On Pelicans preview of this in-season tournament game is scheduled to come for you tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. Until then, my name is Matt George. You have been listening to the Locked On Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.